In this video, we are continuing the Ontology of God teaching. I'm not going to explain all of those things behind me. Please watch the first video. I make it clear why I have written all these things down. So now we are going to have only a small overview. The two aspects we are using in this video is the truth of being, your identity, your nature, your character, your essence, who you really are. That's what actually ontology means, science and examination of that. And the way of being, your lifestyle, how you act, how you behave, this is the other aspect, and we examine what the truth of being of God is and how consequently he acts the same as who he is, and we examined the true human, the original design of human, that it is the same list, almost completely the same, and as a result the way of our being could be the same and is the same actually. And then we looked at the curse of Adam and what it made our truth of being to be, and what is the consequence of it in a way of our being. Of course, truth is quote unquote here because this whole thing is a lie. Has nothing to do with God's original design. So now we are going to look at different interpretations of the gospel, of what redemption of humanity means. I won't make those interpretations equal with different the teachings of different streams or churches, not even the perception of God of different historical eras. I'm gonna just give you some approaches which can be found in many churches and in many historic eras. So they aren't like, they won't be the names of any theological streams. They will be just approaches that you might have had or you might still have. So let's dive in. The first thing, our starting point, is the fall of Adam, which is clearly portrayed here. Because you are bad and sinful, you act like this. And many times we look at each other and see how we act, and we make the conclusion that probably I am bad if I act that bad. Probably there's something wrong with me if I always do wrong. And we make an identity out of this illusion of sin nature. And as I said, Jesus had destroyed both of these, both the way of being and truth of being, in his death, because he took on both of them. But with our clinging to it, we keep the illusion of the sin nature alive, just because we sustain it, we believe in it. And this is why it is our reality, not because it is who we actually are. So the curse of Adam says, you are bad because you inherited sin nature, and this is why you act bad. Nothing you can do about it. You have fallen out of the paradise, no matter of what. I won't go into this topic of like the fall of Adam, but because everyone has like a different interpretation of it. But we all agree that something shifted there, probably only in our minds, but it was hard enough. It was a great deal. It must have been a great deal, even if it only happened in our brains, because it made the existence of the whole humanity the opposite what God has designed us to be. So yes, it's an illusion, but it's a powerful one if you are still believing it. And it affects all aspects of your life when you are in that circle. So it is a lie and it is not to be taken seriously, but it is nevertheless real if you are part of this game. If you haven't realized that Jesus has made you free from this, it can be very much real to you. So, religion has an explanation for that. Religion says that God doesn't and didn't change the truth of your being. You're still a sinful nature. You will always struggle with it. That's what you inherited in Adam. Let's deal with it. When you die, you will be set free from it, but all your earthly life will be spent in constant struggle with who you really are. So in the first case, God doesn't change the truth of your being. So, is there a change in your truth of your being in religion? No. God doesn't change it. But God expects you to act good even if you're not good. God expects you to love even if you are unloving. God expects you to act sinless even if you are sinful. And there is a huge contradiction here. Like you are always trying to act against what you think who you are. And it's quite hard because you are what you think you are in your heart. It is actually a scripture somewhere. Man is what he thinks in his heart, or something like that. So, because we think we do have a sinful nature, it's quite hard to act good. Like, I am bad, I'm hateful, but let's try to smile. Let's try to behave in a way that is absolutely against what I think I am. So it's the most frustrating, life-consuming thing you can do is that. So there is no change in the truth of your being, But the change in your way of being is expected. And you are under constant condemnation because you can never be successful in that, because you are wired to act out, to diffuse what you think we really are. So it's an impossible task to do. This is what the Pharisees taught. This is what the medieval church, most of the medieval church taught. This is what the most of the current Christianity and many other religions teach, that you are bad, but try not to do so. And so it's an unreasonable struggle, and sometimes people are fed up with it, and they say, if the curse of Adam is true, that I am bad, I'm gonna act bad, and I won't care about religion. Actually, simply accepting that is way much easier than this constant struggle where you never have a sense of success. So I actually kind of understand those people who quit religion. I would do it if I had to choose from these. I would definitely choose this. But there is another understanding of what redemption means. There is this version that, redemption is that you keep on trying and maybe you are better, and if you fail, that God condemns you to hell because he cannot do anything about it. I don't agree with that, quite obviously, but that's what we teach, and we even say that this is the gospel. And to be honest, if you think that this is the gospel, that you are originally bad, but try not to act like that, maybe you shouldn't preach the gospel at all. Like, this is the level of the understanding of the gospel where it is worse to know about the gospel than not knowing about it. Like, that understanding of the gospel is so far away from the heart of God that it's better not to know about it. Sometimes Christians, religious people, or in some sense Christians, have a greater setback than non-Christians. Because if you're a non-Christian, you think like, I'm an okay person, not really good, not really bad, I try to do my best. Sometimes I miss it, but I'm an ordinary human being. That's what most non-believers think. What do we teach people when they get saved? You are not a kind of good person. You are bad to the core. You have a sinful nature. You are not on ground zero. You are way below zero. You are minus, 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 minus. And this is why you act bad. And when you act bad, it reassures that it's because you have the sinful nature, and it goes both ways. And this is when we spread the bad news of the sinful nature instead of the good news of salvation. So the salvation is that you can try hard because you basically bad to the bone. Of course, I know not many Christians are that far away from the truth, but there are some. And looking at the history, there were some seasons in the history of mankind where this concept was very widespread and dominant. So we came up with a better idea, and I'm gonna give fake names because I don't want you to identify what I say with certain streams and churches. Let's call it the version of the gospel named New Chance. It's New Chance. I made a mistake, sorry. So in this New Chance version of the gospel, we say that you still have the sinful nature. Sorry, God didn't change that. Is the truth of being changed by God? Still, no. You have still this bad nature. But you have another chance. You can receive the forgiveness of God and you can try again. And when you fail, you can come back to God. Then He gives you grace and you can start your attempts all over again. So we can say, yes, it's just a little bit better than the previous version. You have a kind of hope. You missed it, but you can try again. It's not like you missed it, you go to hell, there's nothing I can do about it. You can go to God, you can get a new restart, you can try your best again. And there's a little bit of hope in that. Like, in that sense, it is way better than the previous version of the gospel was. And most of the modern Christian churches are in that. And most of the other religions are in that phase. Like, you fail and then you start over again. You're still bad. That's why you keep at failing it. But at least there is a hope of succeeding in the next attempt, which is absolutely unreasonable because you failed at the first attempt because you believed something bad about yourself. So if it doesn't change, this surely doesn't, it surely won't change either. So it's like, yes, I can try it again and prove this again, which is kind of like a vain attempt, but there is some hope in it and we should appreciate that. The next name I will write down is cover up. It is something that appeared maybe during the time of Reformation, when people started to discover the grace of God being an issue at all in salvation. Yes, it was believed before that. The grace of God, but you need to pull your actions together. If not, you're condemned to hell. So it was kind of like a new thing, and the great relief for the believer that actually the grace of God covers my actions, cover me up, so that I won't be judged because of my actions. So I keep failing all the time, and at least God won't say that because of your failure, I will cast you away. You don't deserve my love and blessings and things like that. The problem with that understanding of the gospel is that it still says that the truth of your being is still not changed from sin nature to something better. So is there a change? No, still no change. But God doesn't look at this. He is like, I can see that you're messing it up all the time. I won't judge you for that. I won't send you to hell because you cannot pull your actions together. And it lifted up a huge pressure of performance and trying to please God. And so it was a great breakthrough to have the grace of God as an exclusive factor of salvation. Like before, the grace of God was just one part of your salvation, and all the other parts was your thing to do. So you are still bad, but your bad actions are not considered. They are not even seen. So no, it's not changed, but he doesn't look at it. So it stayed the same, but God has his Jesus blood glasses on, and he sees you right, even if you are not. He sees you good, even if your actions are not good. So he doesn't keep a list of your wrongdoings, which is a huge step forward. Like, God is gracious enough not to take my actions on the table of the question of salvation. It is exclusively from the grace of God, but it still didn't change me. It just lifted the condemnation, which is an awesome revelation. But the main issue is that I'm still not who I actually am. So, there is always a huge guilt and shame and condemnation thing about that, because we see that something is good, something is not okay, not good with all of this, and we feel like God wanted us to be better and to act better, but we still can't change it. So there are some people who say, okay, I'm gonna quit the whole condemnation business, and I'm gonna say that God's grace is big enough that nothing what I do matters. Nothing what I think myself to be matters. Only His love matters. And actually, I can be as terrible as I am because He will still see me good. Which is true in some sense. So I'm gonna name this Stay the Same. And you could call it hypergrace, but I won't call it hypergrace because the expression of hypergrace means something very positive for me. It means that God is way much extremely gracious than the most vehement grace preacher could ever articulate. So it's not like, oh, we have overestimated the grace of God in the grace movement, and we should, step back. Like, you've taken it to the extreme. Like, God is not that gracious. Like, be careful. Too much grace can hurt you, That's what we think. And I think, the stay the same interpretation of the gospel is not bad because it has taken grace too seriously. It lacks a very important aspect of the grace of God, which is that it is not just powerful enough to cover you and love you and accept you in everything that you find yourself in, but it is actually powerful enough to make you who you actually are. So this cover-up says that no, you are not good. You are still not better. But you are considered good. God sees you good. But actually, you are not changed. God just thinks that it's okay to have the same bad actions and have the same bad identity. And He still loves you and accepts you and gives you all of His love and blessings, which is 99% true, actually more. It is 100% true, but it needs a very important aspect, which is the transformative power of grace. So, stay the same says, no, you are not changed, but see the good. Not good. but considered good. And what about your behavior and bad lifestyle? He just doesn't care. So, and it's a huge breakthrough, like none of my actions, nothing I believe myself, no matter how much mess I create, I'm still loved, I'm still appreciated, I'm still considered good. This is a huge shift comparing to all of those things. And actually, in my country, Hungary, this stay the same kind of gospel doesn't really exist. I actually haven't met anyone who would preach that. No, so there aren't many grace movements in my country, but there is a 50 shade of condemnation kind of gospel. So it's actually not that much an issue here. But when I listen to like preachers and pastors overseas, I can see that there is a part of the grace movement that actually denies the power of grace, in some sense, that you are loved, you are accepted, everything is okay, therefore stay the same forever. And actually, if you are a serial killer, I think it's a good thing that God doesn't just look at you with love. He actually makes you not to continue killing people. So I think the transformative power is an important issue. Not the importance of salvation. Like, it's not like you only go to heaven when it changes. We are given the gift of salvation only by grace and not by deeds, so that we cannot boast. That's what Paul says. So this kind of understanding that God doesn't care about your actions is actually true. He really doesn't. When it comes to salvation and blessing you, your deeds are not on the table. He loves you because he loves you because he loves you, and that's all he does. The only reason he wants you to experience the fullness of freedom he has given you on the cross is that because he doesn't want you to destroy yourself. Because life is more enjoyable living this. He is not against that and that because it hurts his ego. He's upset, like they can't even do what I expect them to do. He is against it because it destroys you. He's sorry for you. He hurts for you. So for me, grace, I'm so happy that grace didn't just cover me up. Like, I was suicidal. I was thinking about killing myself most of the day for years. And I'm so happy that God declared that he loves me that way, that he loved me that way, and that I'm accepted, and it's okay if I stay depressed the rest of my life. He's still gonna bless me. He's still gonna love me. And I'm so happy that He was good enough to actually make me not want to die. That he actually transformed me, not just accepted me, but actually made me worthy of acceptance. So in my case, if that was only the gospel, I want to kill myself because I'm depressed. And it's good because God still loves me and accepts me. But my life sucks. And God is way better than just seeing you okay. He's making you altogether like Him. So we are getting to the core of the gospel and salvation. I don't say that I discovered the same graal of whatever. My interpretation of the gospel changes like intensively. Like in the last few years, it has gone through all of these. And so I don't say that in 10 days I won't have a more radical view on the gospel, but I think what God made me realize of the gospel is worthy of sharing. So my latest conclusion up until now is that the gospel is about remembering. So this is what I call this final understanding of the gospel: remember. I think the greatest depiction of the gospel is found in Lion King, the first movie, when Simba goes down to the lake and he sees his reflection, and then the old lion appears and he says, "You've forgotten who you are, so you've forgotten me. Remember, remember, remember," echoing. And this is the real issue of salvation, that none of these are true. Both of these have been destroyed in the death of Christ. And He says, remember that you are what I am in the truth of your being. And this is why you can be what I do in your way of your being as well. You have forgotten that you are that, and you have considered this to be the basis of your life, the reality of your life. And this is why you cannot make any of those things work. Because if that part is not changed, there is no point in trying to change that. If the truth of your being is not that, there is absolutely no point in trying to put a mask on this, trying to make look this part good if it's not good. And actually, when we think that, okay, this is what I should be, how should I start? we start with our actions. And God says, no, that's not where we start. We start here. Actually, sin means missing the mark. The mark of what? We think we miss the mark of behavior. We don't act right. We don't do the good things. And we try to change that. And maybe if we change it well enough, we can make the truth of our being a little bit better. It's like, if I can really stop myself doing bad, maybe I can be called good. So if I do this part really well, it could have an effect on that, and I could become what I instinctively feel like becoming, which is this. And God says, no, this doesn't work this way. You don't start the change from the way of being to the truth of being. You started the other way around by remembering who you really are. So, the missing the mark is not missing the mark of your actions. It's missing the mark of your identity. This is what we got wrong. Jesus calls the Pharisees whitewashed tombs or something like that, which is not my kind. But he wanted to say that you try to paint it right, something that is instinctively bad. You try to pay the tithe from the mint and from everything that is ridiculous. You try to make this thing look right, but still it's something that is terribly dead inside. Like, it is whitewashed, but it is a tomb. And Jesus was all about making people realize that you think it's about the actions? No, you fail at your actions because you believe something bad about who you are. So, let's finish our little chart. The truth of your being, according to the real gospel, is completely restored to who you are designed to be. Actually, I think to more. I think we are now united to God, but let's say we are restored to the original concept of the human being. So, the truth of being restored. Restored. And what about the way of your being? When it is restored, it is automatically restored. If you know that you know that you know that you are perfect and holy, what else could you act out but holiness? There's no way a good tree would produce a bad fruit. That's what Jesus said. It's about that. If you are good here, there is no way you can fail here. And if you are not good here, there's no way you can change that. And even if you can, religion can produce a little bit of fruit. Like a kind of to show off. Like, if you try really hard, you can pull your actions together with a lot of willpower, with a lot of trying. But guess what? Even if you can fake it, even if you can act good when you think yourself to be bad originally, it doesn't count in heaven. Not that you are thrown to hell. It doesn't count like as a real restoration, because God is not about restoring that. God is about restoring that. And of course, with that is also restored. So it is restored, and the other one is automatically restored. So I need to take a breath. And what is the difference between these two, these last two? Both of them are about like, you are perfectly loved and accepted by God forever, no matter what you do. Your salvation is exclusively about the grace of God, so you are in. You cannot be more in because you are perfectly in. You are perfectly loved. This is true of both of them. But this, in the real gospel, I think, the power of grace also makes you be who you are. It doesn't just considers you like, okay, by you are not. He's also powerful enough to make you good, both in your who and in your how. And I really love sharing this story. It was in my old video called Power of Grace. This was my first grace video. When I started to walk with God, there was a certain sin bondage that I couldn't deal with. Like, I tried all of those things. I tried to like please God. I tried to use the new chances. I tried to like consider myself good, but still I felt like I want this thing to be changed. And all the attempts were complete failure, and I was so frustrated. And then God said, just stop it. Stop all your attempts. Stop changing this thing from that side. This is not how this math problem is resolved. This is not where you start this problem. Stop it. I know where to start it. I know that this is a truth of being issue, so let me fix it. But that's not what I heard back then. I only interpreted like that, looking at it from this point of view. So God says, chill out. Stop trying to act better. You can clearly see that it doesn't help you, your attempts, so maybe you just should give up. And I was confused, like, I will act even worse if I stop trying to do good. And he said, okay, I'm gonna take care of it. Just be with me. And keep on sinning. Just be with me. And it sounds scandalous, like it's abusing grace. But actually, I would advise to some of the people to abuse grace. Like, if abusing grace means like you just enjoying that you are loved and blessed, even if your actions are not restored yet, I think it's a good thing to just be drenched into the unconditional love and acceptance of God. And this acceptance is big enough to hold you your whole life. So if you feel like you can never be changed, it's okay. It's okay. You will still be loved and you are still saved. The change of your action is not a requirement, it's a fruit. And it's never successful in any other way. So I did what I could do. I was in sin, and then I was worshiping, and then afterwards I was in sin again, and I had zero shame about it. God said, it's okay, I love you anyway. It's like, don't try. You can't do it. Just enjoy that I love you because I love you because I love you. And I think this is what we miss many times when we teach about holiness, is that holiness is not an issue of action, it's an issue of who you are. And if the who you are part is set right, all your actions will follow it. And I was enjoying my times with God more and more, and actually I started to have more joy in my time with God than how much joy the sin would give me. And then I felt like, when did this bondage break? It's not part of my life anymore, but when did it stop? I didn't have any deliverance moment, any great confession moment when I was on my knees crying for the mercy of God. I know that this is how things happen for other people, and I think it's beautiful, but I have no memory of this thing leaving my life. Nothing. It's just like, after a few months, I felt like this is no longer part of my life. I don't know why and how. And it's lost its power. And God said, like, yeah, this is how it works. When you look at me, you realize that this is who you are. And when you realize who you are, your actions will match what you think you are. And this is it. That's how I solve sin issues. I never solve them by, you are still bad, but let's try to make this thing better. And when it's good, when it's better, then maybe we can make this better. And that's how you become like God. God says, no, you start here. Start with me. Look at me. The first message is, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. Oh. So I 100% believe in the transformative power of grace, as well as the unconditional truth of the grace of God. It's not like He is gracious on the one side, but on the other side, He is more righteous, as if these two were in contrast. I think He is all gracious, just gracious, extremely gracious, but He is more gracious than that. He is gracious enough to break this lie and make you realize this. That will transform everything you are and everything you do. So actually, this list is like how powerful we realize grace to be. and salvation to be. And the core of it is that you have always been that, but you started to think you are that, and that's why Jesus became that, to destroy that, so that you can remember that you are that. Yes, it's quite a simple thing, kind of like a childish thing. And I think once I will make a third video on that, when I will collect Bible verses that seem to contradict this, but they don't. Many times those bad ideas, or less true ideas, list all the Bible verses that seem to justify their ideas. And I want to show you with my limited knowledge that actually this kind of understanding of the gospel is very much in the scriptures. Like Jesus and Paul talks from that perspective a lot. So Paul talks about this, like, in Romans quite a lot. Like, you are dead. If you have died in Christ, like, you can put off the sinful nature and its deeds. The sinful nature and its deeds. And you can put on Christ and his deeds. Like, he is very clear on that. Of course, he didn't need a chart back then. And I don't say that it is the most accurate revelation of the gospel. This is how I can perceive the simplicity of the gospel now, and I think it can help people. But it's clearly stated in Jesus' statements. And many times what we think is about the way of being, it's actually not. It's about the truth of being, and the other way around. Like, there are verses that those who are perishing, is it about, like, those who are perishing in the truth of their being, or in the way of their being? In the way of your being. Yes, we always think about heaven or hell issues, but actually those who commit adultery and those who do this and those who are liars and that, they don't inherit the kingdom. They are perishing. Is it about, like, they are perishing in the truth of their being? No! They are perishing in their actions. Like, when you are angry and when you are hateful, in that action, in that feeling, can you inherit the kingdom of God that is peace and joy and righteousness? No! This is why God is against sin, because it limits your ability to enjoy who you are, enjoy the kingdom of God. So many verses about perishing and condemnation are about and just about the way of being. Meanwhile, the truth of your being is this. So we only have an identity crisis here. Nothing more and nothing less. We have forgotten this, and because of believing this lie, we started to act like this. And God doesn't say, try to wipe out that, try to restore that, try to change that. He says, remember that, and then all of this won't make sense anymore. And yes, it requires a little bit deeper study on my part. But I know that all of Paul's sayings are about that. Like, you have died with Christ. If everything about your sinful nature has died, then do you need to do those things? No. Do you need to go to temple prostitutes or sleep with your stepmom? You no longer have to do those things. Stop doing them. This is not part of your nature. You are that. These actions don't match this. Paul wrote down those advices on what we should and shouldn't do, not because he wanted to invent the New Testament law. He wrote those things down because he clearly states every time that because this has died with Christ, this shouldn't exist. So if this is not true, then this is true. But if this is true, this is true as well. That the way of your being should reflect and can reflect that. It's not that you try to reflect. It automatically happens when you know that you know that you know that you are what God is. Then you cannot help but act it out. This is how you are wired. It is effortless. And yet, yes, there are times when you feel like, oh, I already know this is true, but I don't know how this is going to transform my way of being. And this is when you just chill out. God is doing it. And there is no timeline for you. There is no expiration date on the grace of God. You're not missing anything. Like, God is endlessly patient. We could list all the fruit of the Spirit here. Like patience and love and kindness and long-suffering. He's like that. So it's okay if you start to realize this and you feel like your actions are still here. It takes some time to remember. It takes some time to realize that we are all that God is. And when we really understand it, the change in the way of the being will happen. And even if it never happened, you can know these things to be true about you. Even if it never changes, you can still enjoy the acceptance and love and the joy of being just like God. But I know this kind of grace will do this change as well. And I'm so glad that when I was depressed, it did happen. Like, I didn't just experience the complete and unconditional acceptance. God transformed my way of being, which was terrible back then. Like, the way of being of always thinking I'm unlovable and worthless and that I should die. It wasn't a good way of being. I'm so happy that this was also done away with. So I think we can examine some New Testament scriptures and some Old Testament ones from these perspective of truth and being and way of being. For example, very important thing, be holy because I am holy. We always thought about these words because God acts holy. We should act holy and try to put your actions together. No. this was about the truth of our being. Be holy. Be holy because I am holy. And actually, in the Hebrew, there is not much difference between be holy and you are holy. So you could translate it as you are holy because I am holy. So a lot of verses, we made it about the way of being, and they are completely about the truth of being, and the other way around. And I think we can get a dive into that later. I need to study for that a little bit more, but I can't wait to give you some new ideas how grace can be found in the scriptures that had been used for the justification of other gospel interpretations. I will give you a homework. Watch that part of The Lion King when the old lion says, "You have forgotten who you are, therefore you've forgotten me. Remember." I wish you a great remembrance. I love you. Bye. Thank you for watching me.